So we're going to go over if statements. So pretty much how if statements work is something like this. So we're going to have a condition, okay? So this condition is a Boolean. Hold on, let me make this, let me change colors and make this bigger. And what it does is check if a statement is true. So if a statement is, for example, true, then it will execute a code inside its block. If it notices that the statement is false, then it's going to skip that block and continue the program without executing this code. Okay? So an if statement looks something like this in Java. So if this condition is true, then execute a certain amount of code within this block. Okay? So for example, it could be something like this. If x is greater than like 5, if this is true, then execute this. If it's not true, then skip that block of code and continue. There is also, you also don't actually need to include the brackets. You could just write the line of code within this area. Okay, but make sure to include the brackets for, sorry, I meant the curly brackets. You don't have to include the curly brackets. You could ignore them, but you have to include these brackets. Okay, so if you ignore these brackets, you will get an error. So these brackets are important to keep. Now let's write a quick and simple program. So what we're going to make is this. So if we have a number that's divisible by 5, we're going to print out high 5. If it's divisible by 2, we're going to print out a high even. And if it's an odd number, we're going to say high odd. So pretty much it's going to, let's set up our scanner. Okay, and then let's collect our number. Let me increase the size. Okay. All right. So now we're going to do an if statement. If my number is divisible by 5, so let's do modulus 5, because if a number is divisible by 5, then we're not going to get a remainder. So if a remainder is 0, then we're going to print out high 5. Now let's check if my number is instead divisible by 2. Okay, if that's the case, then we're going to print out high even. And now finally, we're going to check if my number is odd. So if it's odd, then it's not divisible by 2, right? It can't be divisible by 2. So if our number does not equal 0, so if our remainder does not equal 0, then we're going to print out high odd. So that means high 5 is technically also a high odd. High odd. All right. And also close the scanner. Oh yeah, and then let's add a print statement here. So that tells us to enter a number. Enter a number. All right, now let's run this code. Enter a number. Let's do 10. High 5 and high even. Okay, because 10 is divisible by 5, so we're going to give it a high 5, and 10 is an even number, so it's high even as well. Now let's do 3. High odd. Okay, because 3 is an odd number, so we get a high odd. Now let's do 5. 5 is an odd number, but it's also divisible by itself, so it also gets a high 5 as well.